This is an Xbox 360 controller. Oh wait, that's embarrassing. Hold on. This is an Xbox 360 controller. You probably recognize it. There are millions of them out there. For PC gamers, this controller signaled the start of a new age of standardization. For better or worse. Let's be honest, mostly for better. Before this time, the PC game controller scene was total chaos. Even Microsoft got in on the action with their Sidewinder series. Now, this series contained regular gamepads, of course, always with a disgusting, mushy circular D-pad that even the 360 would still suffer from. Curiously, sometimes with 6-button configurations, but not always. And also a fairly wide assortment of joysticks of various sizes, including a famous force feedback flight stick, and a cute little racing wheel. But where there's no standardization, there's also room for innovation. No, innovation is a business word. Horrible mouthfeel. How about unholy experiments? This is the power of 3D games needing more than some buttons and a D-pad. This is the dark potential of no longer needing to rely on a game port, unleashed through a universal serial bus. And that USB support means that I can still plug them into a modern computer 25 years later, and, especially with great tools like Steam Input, use them on modern games. Kind of. The actual drivers won't run on modern Windows, but Steam Input mostly gets the job done. Mostly. Let's look at some Microsoft controllers that some would say are beyond bizarre.
Let me be your guide to the bizarre and beyond.
This is the Microsoft Sidewinder Game Pad Pro from 1999. At first sight, it looks pretty standard. 6 buttons, some triggery shoulder buttons that kind of feel like the N64 controller Z button. Fun fact about this one, it was used with the original Xbox prototype, the big X-shaped one. Another fun fact, it's not symmetrical. Look, the handles are not of equal size. Now I know what you're thinking. I could use a burger right now. But also, hey Bob, you said these controllers would be weirdo freakazoids and this just looks like a regular to me. Ah, but you're a fool, an idiot, a real wait, don't go away, sorry, I didn't mean to offend. The whole point of this video is to be educational after all. Alright, first weird thing is this, a shift button. This is a common trend among the later Sidewinders. It functions similar to your keyboard shift button. Basically, it gives you 2 buttons for the price of... well, still 2 buttons. It gives you 12 buttons for the price of 7. Yes, that math checks out. Without the drivers, though, it's just another extra button, but it's still neat. What makes the Gamepad Pro really special, though, is the D-pad. Because it's not a D-pad. But it also is a D-pad. How is that possible?
Now there's one gamepad that can do it all. When you're ready to take your game up to the next level, move up to Microsoft Sidewinder Game Pad Pro. It's the dual mode D-pad that makes the difference, delivering both proportional and digital controls from the same D-pad.
They call it proportional control, which is to say it's an analog... well, it's not a stick. It's similar to the 3DS XL secondary analog nub, but with a little more girth. It's very mushy, not precise at all. And how is it also a D-pad? Is there some kind of mechanism inside that makes it clicky? Nah, it's just done through software. Part of me wants to open it up to see how it works inside, but in classic Microsoft fashion, one of the screws is under the sticker, and I only have one of these. So, because the special feature of this controller is software-based, we're gonna have to jump into a virtual machine to check that out. So here we are in Windows XP, and we have the Sidewinder Central Information System, which is mostly just links to websites and a shortcut to the game controller settings thing. If we go to Properties, you'll see you have profiles for specific games. But if we go to Test, we can see we have proportional mode now. And you can see that it's indeed analog. Not particularly precise, but hopefully any game that would use this would use some kind of filtering system. If we hit the buttons too, you can see those all work. If we now go to directional pad mode, you see it behaves like a D-pad. This would be terrible for any kind of game that would actually require D-pad usage, by the way. It's just, it feels so spongy, this whole thing. It feels like it's on one big sponge. Now let's try it in a game. I have chosen Sega Rally Championship because that's one of the few games I was able to get working, even though the music is not working.
Sega Rally Championship.
3, 2, 1, go!
I'm trying to get the camera to change. Nothing's working right now, FYI. No, don't exit. Here, it's supposed to show Microsoft Sidewinder. Look, Microsoft Sidewinder is grayed out. Why is it not showing it? Why are you not working? I'm gonna restart Windows. All right, so this is Sega Rally. And again, I gotta say, all right, the benefit of an analog stick is you feel some tension when you're turning, which helps you understand exactly where you are, where your stick is. This is essentially a D-pad with analog buttons. If you remember, the PlayStation 2 had analog pressure-sensitive buttons that very few games used. That had very little feedback too. This is a little more feedback because the D-pad is bigger and the travel is further. It does not feel good. It does not feel good, and I did not finish the race. Oh, so close. So that is the Microsoft Sidewinder Game Pad Pro. Professional grade, not for amateurs. You know, ergonomically, it's fine. It sits nice in the hand, even though the handles are not of equal length, which is kind of strange. The face buttons are nicely placed. They fit the thumb. The shift button is fine. The D-pad, I've said what I've had to about the D-pad. It's terrible. This with a regular D-pad would be a fine 90s PC controller, I think. Even the shoulder buttons, which are somewhat trigger-like, are fairly nice. You know, I'm conditioned now to expect little shoulder bumpers, and it doesn't have that, but that's fine. That's all I have to say about it. Let's move on to something a little stranger. Don't put any of this in the video, please. Speaking of professional grade, here is the Microsoft Sidewinder Freestyle Pro from the year of our Lord 1998. Another big old controller from Redmond, Washington. Here's a quick comparison with the Xbox 360 controller and with the previous Sidewinder. I have a bit of a personal history with this controller because I actually owned one as a kid. As a little tiny boblet. Not this one. This one I ordered off the internet. The original one I had is presumably resting deep in the dump next to the airport on Aruba. Rest in peace, little guy. Why did I have this as a child? Look, I spent my hard-earned allowance money on this because I had motocross madness and enjoyed it a ton, but I was really bad at it. Surely getting a controller specifically designed for it would entirely fix that problem, right? Right? You can tell the Freestyle Pro predates the previous controller, by the way, because check this shit out. Game port. Luckily, this specimen came with the adapter. USB, baby. Okay, we have the usual here now. 6 buttons, a shift button, horribly mushy D-pad that really is just a D-pad, really big, clicky shoulder buttons. The ergonomics of this controller are a little strange because it's got these huge phallic handles that are quite comfortable in the hand, but these shoulder buttons are so weirdly flat and big. You can put 2 fingers on them, and the D-pad is angled awkwardly. Right in the middle you've got a scroll wheel, which is actually kind of great for setting the throttle in flight games, and probably not much else. But that is not what makes this Sidewinder Freestyle or Pro. You got a start button here, of course, and right next to it, a sensor button. A sensor for what? For motion controls, baby! Yep, this is a motion detecting controller many years before Sony ripped off Nintendo with the 6-axis. It only does roll in 2 axes, and there's no translation whatsoever. There have been motion controllers before this, of course, as Editor Me will now show on screen, but I'm pretty sure those are all digital. This is 100% pure analog, baby. So it would have been quite groundbreaking had it been a success. Ironically, Microsoft is now the only big gaming hardware company whose controller has no motion sensing whatsoever. So this is the one controller of the bunch that Steam Input has some trouble with, because I can't properly calibrate the sensor as a joystick. But Windows itself recognizes it no problem. And, unlike the Game Pad Pro, the switch to turn off motion controls is hardware based. So let's just do what this thing was meant to do and play some Motocross Madness. This is Motocross Madness running in DG Voodoo and DX Wind. It's very exciting. So, and it's not plugged in. I forgot to plug it in. You can tell because the light is not on. Hold on, I'll be right back. All right, got it plugged in now, and as you can tell, motion controls are working. Let's go do some driving around. Now look, this controller is very old. I can't tell if this is exactly how it was in the past, but it is a little jittery. All right. Motocross Madness is a cool game because you just got these wide expanse height map worlds where you could just drive around in freestyle. And a couple of things I like about this game. One, the camera, which I'm just changing with the D-pad here. You can kind of have these really cool camera situations that kind of remind me of, what's it called? Mud Runner, where you kind of have this diagonal view. Feels a little extra cinematic. Let's try to get a wheelie. Let's try to get a wheelie. Come on. We can do a wheelie. Maybe from 0. Come on. Come on. Nope. Can't get a wheelie. Of course, if you know Motocross Madness, you know what I'm going to have to do in a minute. So don't worry about that. Just sit tight. Let me just have fun playing with this silly little controller. Let's try to get up. Let's try to get up. All right. Hold on tight. Whee! This was half the fun of the game. So does this actually make the game better? Probably not. I don't know if it's possible to just bind it with a mouse to do the same thing, but you know, you don't really need this directional control to play the game, and there's not much depth to it anyway. And also, the scroll wheel has no use in this game whatsoever. So let's play something where it will have a use. So this is Crimson Skies, a flight combat game released by Microsoft in some year. I also had it as a kid. I don't know if I used this controller to play it, but I remember having a good time. I'm getting my ass blasted right now.
I'm still here, punk.
Takes place in a fun, interesting alternate universe where there's a lot of sky piracy. I'm letting my wingman do all the work, but I'm demonstrating a controller here. I'm doing things, I think, at the same time.
Under heavy fire. Repeat, heavy fire.
I gotta say, for a flight combat game, it doesn't feel all too bad. As long as it's arcadey and not too simulation.
I must be jumping to parachute.
Let's try to get this last one down. Oh, got a nice cockpit view. You can look around with the D-pad, which is nice for a little disorienting.
Prepare to be crashing, pirate.
There we go. Shot down.
You're not going nowhere, pal.
I kind of want to play this one again. Alright, I'm controlling a video about controllers. I guess we need to move on to the next one.
I'm in trouble here. They're cutting me to ribbons. Help!
So that is the Sidewinder Freestyle Pro. That's its name, right? Yeah. You know, it's an interesting gimmick. Was definitely interesting for 1998, especially with how games became more 3D and complicated and required more controls. I like the big long handles. They're kind of like the GameCube handles, but even more comfortable somehow. But as a controller, it still has so many issues. The D-pad is garbage, and the shoulder buttons are just so strange. So these little triggers were perfectly functional and fine. I don't know why they had to make them so big. It feels strange in the hand, but I still have fond memories of it. And I'm happy I have another one in my collection. But let's move on to the next one, which is going to be even stranger. Okay, now we're really getting out there. This abomination is the Microsoft Sidewinder Dual Strike, released in 1999. No Pro, strictly for amateur use. It's the largest controller so far. Again, we have a shift button, and we have these big old clicky shoulder buttons. This one was designed specifically for shooters because, as you can see, this half of the controller rotates freely. Just think of it as a Wiimote glued to a nunchuck with a trackball, and instead of the nunchuck having an analog stick, it has a huge sliding 8-way hat. There's some shared design language with the Freestyle Pro, but it's also entirely unique. The main buttons on the pointer part are kind of like PlayStation-style segmented D-pad, although they are separate buttons. There's X and Y buttons on the big half. It has these little cutout lines that look like vent holes, but they're purely decorative. Both this and the Sidewinder are made of some quality hefty plastic, I must say. It's got this nice rough texture to it that has held up 25 years later. The cable sticks out the bottom like a Dreamcast controller, which is fine when you're gaming, but makes it a little annoying to store upright or display nice. Although it came with its own special drivers and software and profiles for popular games that came out when it released, it maps perfectly on Steam input so long as you invert the Y-axis. You know what that means.
If you see one of these buttons, press it, and I will appear to demonstrate.
Just waiting for this lady to end her talk. So as you can see, look around, point to where you want to look, use the hat for walking around. Let's go pick up our suit. I know, I'm ready to go. So I've played with this a little bit. You kind of get used to it. It's not perfect. I mean, I've never played Half-Life with a controller either, to be fair. What kind of sicko would play Half-Life with a controller?
You will now duck under the next set of obstacles.
But this is one of the games that it came with a profile with, although I'm not using the driver software.
Now we will combine.
I don't quite understand why these buttons are shaped like this. I think if they were a more normal configuration, it would be a little easier to touch multiple buttons at the same time.
Keep trying. You'll get it.
Come on now, Bob. Let's not embarrass ourselves.
Great work. Now there's one more style of jumping that requires its own charging module. Seen here.
Okay, so the long jumping gets a little tricky because you have to hold two buttons at the same time. And these buttons, if they were round, I think it would be a little easier.
Nice
But we
job.
did it fine. But again, this is not my first time.
Welcome to the Black Mesa Target Range, where you will receive training in firing a weapon, reloading, and firing the attached grenade launcher. Please pick up your weapon. You'll have to hit every target in order to complete the course. Commencing sequence in 5, 4, 3,
Here's the real test.
1.
Oh, God. It's not very accurate. I don't know if it's an improvement over a regular controller, to be honest. But, like, the point was there were no regular controllers back then.
You have completed the Black Mesa Target Range.
If this video gets 100,000 views, I'm gonna play through Half-Life with this controller on my Twitch channel. So that is the Sidewinder Dual Strike. You know, it's a neat idea, and I appreciate the attempt, but the execution is kind of half-baked. I get what it's supposed to be. You point the right half like a gun. You use the hat for motion, and then you get some buttons for all the other shit. My biggest problem, besides, you know, the accuracy and having better alternatives, is the ergonomics. The button placement is alright, but the grips, especially considering their size, are kind of weird. Your middle fingers don't really have a place to rest. And, you know, don't try multiplayer with this. So, what happened to the Sidewinders? Well, with Microsoft shifting its gaming efforts onto the Xbox, the branding kinda died, and so did most of the interesting experimentation. Microsoft was barreling down the path that would lead us to standardization on PC controllers. Did you know, for instance, that although the plugs are different, the original Xbox controllers are basically just USB? Isn't that fun to learn? From what I can tell, the Sidewinder brand was revived at least once for a gamer keyboard and mouse that didn't make much of an impact, and that was it. The Sidewinder was dead. But Microsoft wasn't entirely done making weird controllers. No, we're not talking about you today. This is the Microsoft Xbox 360 Wireless Speed Wheel, released in 2012. I bought it because it's just the dumbest looking thing I've ever seen in my life. I wanted it so much I got a good deal and bought it with a boxed Xbox 360 Elite for like 30 euros, which I needed because it's a wireless Xbox 360 controller and therefore you can't use it on PC unless you buy this thing that dingle dangle dongles, which sells for about 30 euros. Yeah, that's not happening anytime soon. This is right about from the age where Microsoft were competing hard with Nintendo for the wallet of the casual gamer, which famously resulted in the Kinect.
You ever wonder what the bottom of an Avatar shoe looks like? Well, bam! There it is.
And then Bill Gates saw Reggie show off a piece of plastic.
A custom Wii wheel that makes its debut with Mario Kart for Wii.
So they thought, hey, we've got a couple of Forza games coming out. Let's make something weird for grandma to buy with it. Gotta keep those margins up, baby.
Press the turquoise button, because then you can order pizza from the Chinese restaurant. They might give you a Szechuan pizza with anchovies on it. I don't like anchovies. You know why? I get the hives. I break out. I can't breathe. Possible death situation. That's not how I want to go out.
Okay.
Okay, I know it's okay. That's what I said. Give me the thing. Give it to me. Looking like a mime. Are you a mime? See? You see what I'm saying? You see how hard this is?
So this is the speed wheel, which, as you can see, is not at all a wheel, but it functions like one. Kinda. Like if you don't have the room for a real racing wheel, but you still want to go meow, meow, and I guess it suffices. But it has some strange limitations. First, let's look at what it does have. Terrible 360 D-pad. Check. Start and back buttons integrated into the central ring. Check. Remarkably small but perfectly functional face buttons. Check. Look, here they are compared to a regular controller's buttons. You've got the central Xbox button for all your Xboxing needs. On the back, we've got some nice chunky analog triggers for accelerating and braking, I guess, if you're that kind of driver. And that's it. That's all the buttons. Notice something missing? Yeah, no shoulder buttons at all. So if you're wanting to drive in manual in a game that doesn't have controller remapping, you're just out of luck. This controller has less functionality than a regular 360 controller. In some ways, it has less functionality than the Sidewinder Freestyle Pro because it only turns on one axis. Also, these things light up in green along with the rumble. The promo material makes them bright green, but as you'll see when I play with it in a minute, it's not as impressive in real life. Also, this is entirely my mistake, but for some reason, possibly because this thing was sold alongside and sometimes bundled with Forza Motorsport 4 and Forza Horizon, I thought they would light up in yellow and red to follow along the racing lines those games have. I even bought this beat up old steel book of Forza Horizon to show it off, and it doesn't. I don't know where I got the idea from. My imagination has run wild on me once again. Let's see what it plays like. It doesn't have batteries in it. Don't forget to put batteries in it. Holding it feels kind of strange because it really isn't wheel-like at all. It feels more like an aircraft yoke, you know? But it doesn't have any of that functionality. So this is what it's like playing with the Microsoft Xbox 360 wireless speed wheel. You know, it doesn't feel too bad. There is, of course, no real feedback. There's rumble, but there's no resistance. So just like with the Freestyle Pro, you're just kind of waving your hand in the air, and you don't get the resistance that you would get from a joystick, or in the case of a racing game with an actual steering wheel. You can kind of see the lights light up. It's not very impressive. The rumble is standard Xbox 360 controller rumble. Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. This is what it's like. I want to show off one thing and a small difference with games that don't support it. So hold on one second. So as you can see here in the options menu for Forza Horizon, it natively supports the controller and doesn't even use all of the buttons. So I guess for a game like this, it's quite ideal. But anything that would require triggers of any sort, it's useless. So I just wanted to show off what the controls menu would look like for a game that doesn't have native support for the speed wheel. This is Race Driver Grid, another classic racing game from that era. And as you can see, it sees a wheel, but it interprets it as the regular Microsoft Xbox whatever wheel, which does have paddle shifters which function as trigger buttons, which this one doesn't have. And that's just one of the many ways that that would be a superior experience. But I suppose there is a place for a thing like this. I think ergonomically, I wish it was a little rounder. I do appreciate how deep the trigger buttons go. And of course, I didn't buy it to play with it. I bought it because it looks stupid, and it's fun. There is one more weird out there Sidewinder controller, the Sidewinder Strategic Commander. It looks like this, and was meant for strategy games, as its name implies. My ADHD is far too terminal to play strategy games, so I'm just not as interested in it. Here's a video by someone else if you're curious. So these are some of my weirdo Microsoft controllers. I like them. They're quirky, they're unique. I am now also hopelessly addicted to collecting more weird controllers. So if you would like to support me in that endeavor, Patreon. Also, I'm just gonna have to find a bigger house to store and display them all. Did you have any of these? Did you actually use them? Are there any games you want to see me try with them so we can have a little laugh together? Answer these questions in the helpful comment box down below. And thank you very much for watching. Yeah, he had a knife, but it counts.